Hi, this is a video dealing with the subject of preflighting of documents in InDesign. I'm going to open up a document that I have prepared here, and I'll come to the missing font issue in a moment, but I wanted to just talk about what is preflighting. So when you have finished your design and you're ready to send it to print, preflighting is basically the term used for preparing a digital document properly for professional printing, particularly offset litho printing, which is still the dominant printing technology for large volume print runs, such as for full color magazines, brochures, and catalogs. So preflighting is basically getting a document prepared once you've designed it. So the first thing I'm looking at here is missing fonts. I've deliberately prepared this document with some errors in it so that we can go through the preflighting process. So if there are any missing fonts, you need to sort those out immediately. So I've deliberately used a font that I've removed from my system. So I can either choose find fonts here, or I'm actually not going to do it now. I'm going to press close, and then I'm going to go to page 3, and you can see highlighted in this pink color is my missing font. So whenever you see that pink background, it means that font is not available, and it's substituted it with some other font, which at the moment looks horrible. So I'm going to change this to a different font instead of finding the original font and installing it. So if you don't fix it when you first open the document, you can go to Type, Find Font, and this is the dialog box that will come up. And you can see that the font that is missing is BICMscript Pro. So I'm going to select that. It's got the little warning sign next to it, and you can see that the font that it's replaced it with is Minion Pro. So I'm going to change that to Helvetica. And where is it? I should be able to find that easier. And then say change all. And now I need to fix a few things here. So the first thing is that you can see that my text is completely overset here, indicated by this little red item, little red box that's telling me the text is overset. Overset text means that the text is not fitting in the box. So the other thing I want to draw your attention to down here is the live preflight. So you can see there is a little red light and it says 1 error. If I click on the little arrow and I choose preflight panel, it's going to open up this preflight panel, and I can see over here it says there's one text problem and it's overset text, and this is where it is on page 3. So that's pretty useful, but we'll come back to the preflight panel in a moment, because the live preflight is not set up really for thorough preflighting. It's really very basic preflighting. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Just a few notes. When you are going to send a job to a printer, it's a good idea to find your printer and go and talk to them and find out what their requirements are and what technology they can support. There are a lot of things that differ between printers, and it's always a good idea to develop a good relationship with your printer. I'm going to go through the basics, but also remember to talk to your printer. They might have, for example, a different bleed requirement than what I'm showing you here. The other thing is, if you're going to be doing brochures, catalogs, journals, magazines, things like that, you need to try and keep your number of pages into multiples of 4. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and so on. And the reason why is because when a printer gets to collate and to bind your document, it's much easier if there are double page facing pages both sides. Individual pages are very difficult to include in things like signatures. So always try and keep to 4-page multiples. The other thing that's really important at this stage, before you start your preflighting, is to package your document for editability. So some of the preflighting things you do may actually be destructive. For example, converting your text to outlines. And you don't want to only have one preflighted version that you can't go back and edit. So at this stage, it's a good idea to package the document as an editable version so that you can always come back to it later if you need to. So I'm going to do that by going to File, Package, and press Package, and it says it must be saved, so I'll press yes, save it. You can put in some instructions to the printer. In this case I'm not going to, and then I'll just pop it on my desktop, and I'll just call this folder before pre-flight, and I'll just say BG for Botanic Gardens, and I'll also call the document before pre-flight. Okay, over here I'm going to include an IDML and the fonts and linked graphics, just so that I've got that all saved for me as kind of an archive really. There's my font warning. It's just telling me that I may not use fonts that I don't have the legal right to. I would say that you don't really have to worry too much about this, providing you're using either system fonts or the fonts that come bundled with the Adobe Creative Cloud. You should be safe. I don't know of anyone that's been sued for using a font anyway. But just to be safe, stick to the bundled fonts. Okay, then it's going to package it, and I'm now ready to start my pre-flight process. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that if you're on a system that has fairly poor graphics capabilities, you will find that some of your graphics are degraded like this. So here you can see that this is very chunky. And the reason why is because InDesign is trying to save system resources by previewing your graphics at a very low resolution. So don't panic. It doesn't mean that your graphics actually look like this, but you need to check it. So to check it, you would go to your view menu and to display performance and a high quality display. If it cleans up like this, then you know that your graphics are good. If it still looks bad, then it is bad, and then you need to go and correct that. But in this case, this is a vector graphic from Illustrator, and I can see that it's coming through nice and sharp. So that's what I want to see. So going back to the pre-flight panel here, what you need to do is you need to create your own profile, which is going to create a more thorough pre-flighting of the document. So I'm going to click and go to pre-flight panel, and then I'm going to go to the menu and choose define profiles, and I'm going to make my own profile, and I'll just call it Mike's Preflight. And over here I can start to change some things. So under general, that's just a description. Under links, yes, I do want to check for missing links, and inaccessible URLs not really relevant here, so that's all good. Then for color, I want to make sure that let's see, color spaces not allowed. I do not want to allow RGB or spot colors. So you have to make sure that you know how to control spot colors. If this is just a process color document, you want to make sure that you don't allow spot colors. And I definitely do want to allow cmyk, so I'll close that up. Overprinting applied. The rest of this should be alright. We want to check maybe someone's accidentally used registration instead of black, so I'll put that on as well. Then under images, under image resolution, this is quite important, I think, is what we need to check is that our images have a minimum resolution of 300. So that's basically the optimum for printing, and I'm going to set that for all of these, and 1-bit image minimum resolution. I don't have any 1-bit images, but that's fine, I'll leave it at that. I'm going to give myself a little bit of room, so I'm going to say maximum resolution, and I'll just say 360. Okay, I don't want to make it 1200 because it means I'm wasting file size. Non-proportional scaling, definitely I don't want that. That means that your images are squashed. What else do I want to check? Minimum stroke weight, yes. I want to make sure that all my strokes are at least 0.25, because anything below 0.25 might not print. let's see, we'll leave that. Okay, so that's all of my image stuff. And then under text, I definitely want to check for overset text, missing fonts. Everything else is good there. And under documents, page size and orientation, I want to make sure, well, this is a bit overkill for just a 4-page document, but if you had a multiple page document, like 80 pages or something, you might want to make sure that it's all the correct size, but I'll leave that off. It's overkill. Blank pages, bleed and slug setup. Okay, I want to make sure that the bleed is set to 2 millimeters. Okay, that's bleed size must be minimum of 2 millimeters. We won't include a slug, and so that's all good. So I'll save that and press OK, and then I'm going to choose that profile, and you'll see straight away it comes up and says 35 errors. So now I've got some work to do. So before I actually go and look at the preflighting, I know what some of the errors are, so I'm going to talk you through those one step at a time. So the first thing you need to check is your color mode. You need to make sure you're in cmyk. So you can do that by going to Edit and down to Transparency Blend Space. And over here you can see it's on cmyk, which is what I want. Also, under File, Document Setup, you want to make sure that your intent is set to print. Okay, so that's my color mode. I need to make sure that I have a bleed. So again, File, Document Setup, and I need to set my bleed to 2 millimeters. Again, you need to check this with your printer. So now I have a bleed, that's the red line there. I need to now make sure that all my images and graphics that touch the edge of the page actually bleed off to the bleed mark. So I'm going to take this background color here and bleed it off. Same at the bottom. I'm going to take this image and bleed it off. Okay, so that's my page 3. Page 2 I don't have to worry about because the edges are white. There's no color going to the edge. The front page or the cover I do need to bleed off. So again, I'm just going to bleed that to the bleed mark. So that's cover 2, 3, and then 4. There's this background screened back image which needs to bleed as well. Okay, so that's my bleed taken care of. Then I need to check for spot colors. Am I using any colors that are not processed? So I'm going to go to Window, Output, Separations Preview. And I'm just going to choose Separations. And you can see straight away that I have a spot color. So I've got cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's my cmyk. And then one extra color which is called toffee. So I'm going to turn off all my process colors to find out where that toffee color is. So let's go. It's not on page 4. It's on page 3. And it's on page 1. So I need to fix that. So I'm just going to put my cmyk back on again. And I'm going to go to my swatches panel and double click on that spot color. Now I can tell it's a spot color because of this little graphic with a little spot in the middle of it. So I'm going to double click on that and I'm going to change my color type from spot to process and make sure it's cmyk and press OK. And now you can see my separations preview is just process colors. So I've fixed that. Of course, if you do want to use a spot color, that's a whole other story. You need to make sure you know how to manage that. Okay, so I've fixed my colors. Now I need to check for transparency. So you do that, and the reason why you have to do this is because when a document gets printed, it gets broken down into basically vector paths and raster images. And the document is analyzed, and the way it's configured will determine what gets rasterized into an image and what stays as vector paths. So if I go to Window, Output, Flattener Preview, and I say, show me all transparent objects. So I can see here that this gardens text has a drop shadow. That drop shadow will be turned into a raster graphic. And That's okay here because the text will still remain vector. It's not affecting the botanic text, and it's just going to mean that this background image and the drop shadow will become one image. If I choose all affected objects, you can see this whole image together with the drop shadow will become a raster image. Now that's okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to go to the next 2 pages and press and go back to transparent objects, and now I can see that there is a drop shadow behind magical moments, and there's also a drop shadow behind this color box. Now here it's going to get interesting. I need to see what is going to be affected by that transparency. So if I say all affected objects, you can see that some of my text is red, which means some of this text is actually going to become part of an image. It's going to be rasterized. And that's a bad thing, especially for finer text, because it means that it's going to become blurry and it's not going to match the sharper vector text. So that's a problem. Let's go and have a look at the back page and transparent objects, and this is a screen back image, and if I say all affected objects, you can see that this text here is going to be rasterized, which is a bad thing because this text here will be sharp, this text here will be blurry. So the best way for you to manage this, and right from the beginning you should get into the habit of doing this, is just making sure that all your text is always on a layer above everything else. So to fix this, I'm going to go to my layers panel and I'm going to make a new layer and call it text. Now I should have done this as I designed. I deliberately didn't, so that we can see how this works. So I'm going to select that text and then all of these text objects and move them up into the text layer, and then I'm going to press refresh, and now you can see that text is no longer red. It's no longer going to be rasterized. It's on top of the transparency, which is what I want. So I'll just call the layer below graphics and images, and then I'm going to go back to page 2 and 3, and I'm going to do the same thing. Take the text and move it onto a layer above, refresh, and now you can see this text is not affected by that drop shadow. Okay, so now that I've got that sorted out, my transparency sorted out, I can close my flattener preview, and I know that I'm not going to have any unwanted rasterization. Okay, so let's fix the text problem. That's the overset text. So I'm going to take this text box and just extend it down, and we need to make some adjustments here. So I'm going to bring the font down just so that I can see what's happening, and then I'll bring it up to a size that I'm happy with. Okay, that's all good. I'm happy with that. No more overset text. So that's all fixed. Now, in a case like this, probably would have been easier for me to just go and reinstall the missing font. Then I would have got exactly what my client would have signed off on. But I didn't do that just to show you that you can also choose a different font. If you are going to be sending your job to a printer that maybe you've never used before and you're unsure about, what you can do is you can convert your text or your type into outlines. What that does is it means there's no live text in your document. All your text is basically just shapes. This used to be a requirement. It's a fairly extreme measure to take these days because most PDF conversions handle text really well and you won't have anything lost in translation. But if you're not sure, then I would suggest you do go and convert all your text to outlines. So I'm going to do it here. I don't normally, because I have a good relationship with my printer and I know that they won't have a problem. But if I didn't, I would do this. So with your text selected, you would go to type and create outlines. And this now becomes actually shapes. So you can't get any font problems. This, I think I've already done it too. Let's just see. Yeah, that's no longer live text. Here I'm going to do the same thing. Select, type, create outlines. Same with this stuff. Okay, and then the heading here I think has been done already, so that's not a problem. So there should actually be no more text in this document at all. and the front text has also been done. Okay, so that's dealing with text. The next thing is dealing with images. So your images need to be CMYK. There is an argument these days for leaving your images RGB because the PDF process can make the conversion for you. However, I think that most old school people will still insist on you making the conversion yourself. So if I start on the first page and I select this image and I go to my links panel, you will see that it's telling me here that my image is RGB. It is actually 240 pixels per inch resolution, but because of the way I've scaled it here, it's only 217 pixels per inch effective resolution. So that's the resolution that counts. So it's actually too low, and that's why it's going to be in the errors. And then right at the bottom it says scaled to 110%. So this image is actually scaled up bigger than what its original size is. So what I normally try and do here is during the conversion to CMYK, I also just crop my image to the correct size. So what I would do is go to my width and height and write that down, so 214 by 301, and then I would, let me just write that down so I can remember it, 214 times 301. And then what I would do is I would send it to Photoshop. So I'm going to go into my options for my links panel and say edit with Photoshop. Okay, so now this image is in here. Now what I would do is go to my crop tool. I would choose here width, height and resolution. I would put in 214 millimeters by 301 millimeters at pixels per inch 300. So now I can move my image into position, and I know that when I crop it, it's going to be exactly the right size and resolution, and I'm getting to do my crop myself in Photoshop, which is a much better program for scaling images and so on. So I'm going to press enter. Now I know that that image is exactly the right size. And also another thing that's a good idea is to, while you're about it, when you convert your image to CMYK, there's definitely a change in the vibrancy of the image. Images tend to become a little bit flatter. So I'm going to convert to CMYK, and then I'm going to actually just go into my adjustments and just increase the contrast a bit. And I'm also going to go to vibrance. I can't access vibrance from a CMYK color space, so I'll just use hue and saturation, and I'll just bump the saturation up a little bit. Just means that when it gets printed, you get a much better representation of the original image. I'm going to save this. I'll switch back to InDesign, and now you can see the image is huge because the fitting settings don't work anymore. So I'm going to right click and say fitting, fit content to frame. And now if I look in my link settings, I've got exactly 300 pixels per inch actual and effective. I've got a 99.9% scale, which is close enough. So that's the process I'm going to go through. Now I'm not going to make you sit through that. I'm going to pause and go and finish this whole process of going through for each image, except the vector graphics. This is the Illustrator graphics. I don't have to do that. And also on the back cover, these are all Illustrator graphics. I don't have to do it for those, but all of the raster graphics I need to do that for. So for example, this one here, I would write down 50 millimeters by 35 millimeters, go into Photoshop and do the whole process. So I'm going to do that quickly, and then I will come back once that's done. So now that I've gone through that process, you'll see that in my Preflight panel, so I get to that from here, Preflight panel, is right down to now only 13 errors. So let's have a look at what those are. So it says 11 color space not allowed, and you can see that these are all Illustrator items. So obviously my Illustrator document is not CMYK. So and that I can remember because it was originally for a website. So all of these vector graphics are actually from one Illustrator file. So I'm going to switch to that Illustrator file, and I'm just going to change the mode to cmyk, save it, and switch back to InDesign. And you can see that now I'm down to just 2 errors. So non-proportional scaling is the one, so let's go and have a look at where that is. So it says page 4, page 4, and it's this background graphic. Now if I look at this background graphic, the scale is 98.4. That's close enough. I'm not going to stress about that, so I can dismiss that. And then the other one is stroke weight too small. So let's go and have a look. That's on page 4 as well. And you can see that it's highlighted it here. So this stroke is actually 0.15. So I'm just going to change that to half a point in size. And you can see now I'm just left with that one error, which is the non-proportional scaling. So it bugs me to have one error. So let's see if we can fix that. There we go. That's what I want to see, a green light. Okay, so now that I've got a green light using my own profile, I'm now almost ready to go. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to proof it. So proofing is the process of seeing what is it going to look like as a printed document. So first of all, I'm going to press W, which will take me into preview mode, and I'm going to go up to view and set my proof setup to US web coated, which is your standard sort of glossy paper. And then I'm going to go back there and choose proof colors. Well, it's already on, and that will give you a fairly close idea of what your printed document will look like. This is what your client is likely to get. So at this stage you can go and make adjustments if you want to. Of course, the accuracy of this proof setup is determined by the quality of your monitor. I've got a 5K iMac, so my quality of my color is very good. However, if you've got an old monitor or a cheap monitor, don't trust what you see. You're going to have to maybe have a proof printed in order to see what you're going to get. Alright, so now last step is to do another package with all the preflighting done. So I'm just going to go package and go through to my desktop, and I'll just put it in a folder called Preflighted BG Botanic Gardens, and I will set everything up. I'll just leave it on the default and say, well, before I do that, you see that it's got include PDF here. Now the reason why I don't put that on is because even if I choose the correct print PDF, I don't get access to the settings for it when I output from here. Maybe Adobe will fix that at some stage. So I'm just going to leave it on the default and say package, and I now have a safe package of everything that I've done here. Now I need to output to a print ready PDF. This is the last step. So file, Adobe PDF presets, PDFX 1A 2001. Now this is the safest standards compliant preset. If you've spoken to your printer and they can support newer PDFX formats, then by all means use them. However, the 2001 is the safest in terms of getting back what you want, especially if you're not absolutely sure about your printer's technological capabilities. So just PDFX 1A 2001 is the best option as far as I'm concerned. And then I'm just going to put it into my preflighted folder, and I'm just going to say print ready, and save. And there's a few things that I need to change here. One is make sure that I view after exporting, make sure that I put it on spreads, make sure that I go to marks and bleeds. Now here I normally just put all printers marks on and use document bleed settings. Sometimes your printer gets irritated if you do this because they feel that that's their job, so talk to them about it. But if it's a new printer, I will always put this on just to let them know that I know what I'm doing. Okay, and then export, and this will process and it will open it up in your default PDF viewer. So I'm just going to pop, I've got Acrobat Pro DC open here, and so there's my cover, and there's all of my printers marks, crop marks, registration marks, and so on. On the inside, that double page spread and my back cover, and the images are nice and vibrant, and the printer will be happy to receive something like this. So that's the whole process of pre-flighting from start to finish. Sometimes you can cut corners here and there. You might not have to go into as much detail as I have, but if you follow all of these steps, you should be safe. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and see you next time.